Well, good evening, you sexy little TikTok-y, YouTube-y, podcasty bastards. Tonight I have pre-recorded the show because I really wanted to get this guest on and work to his schedule. We cover a lot. We cover misinformation, anti-vaxxers, stem cell research, and whether anyone's ever presented the idea of a human centipede to a science ethics committee. And, oh yeah, whether, as a scientist, he agrees and accepts that civilization is about to come to a fucking end. It's all here, and it's 95% a perfect interview. There are a couple of bits where the Skype dropped out, though, but 95% perfect. So please do bear with us as we take you on a magical scientific journey with Dr. Paul Cross. And sup, people. Welcome to episode 81 of Thompsin and Other Disappointments. Quick shout out to the Patreons for their continued support, Kerry and Paul. You guys are bloody terrific. You are, as I said earlier in the week, just flawless, lovely people with bursting hearts. Though we hope not in the literal sense, because cardiac episodes can actually be incredibly serious. Now look, 81 episodes in, and you guys, I don't know what point you jumped into the podcast, when you started listening, watching. Maybe it was because of its political leanings and various guests that I've had on. You know, the content that I do with Tan and Davey and Marina and others, I really enjoy it. But some of you sort of long-time listeners might be also familiar with the fact that I like to tap into some academic subjects. I've had a psychologist on, physicists, and yeah, I don't know. I suppose I have a healthy interest in tech and science, and I wanted to tap back into that here tonight, where I can delve into a subject that I mean, well, look, here's the thing, right? I feel, perhaps arrogantly, like I might have sort of just figured politics out now, you know, like just get the fucking Tories out. Like, how is it so hard? Just get them the fuck out, for fuck's sake. Like, we've solved this puzzle. I feel like I've solved that one. But with science, there's still all manner of unsolved problems and theories and research that is honestly fascinating to dive into. So my guest tonight is a scientist involved in STEM education and clinical trials. He was also involved in sharing vaccine-related information, fighting misinformation on social media at the height of the pandemic. And tonight joins me, a complete fucking idiot, to educate me on those specialist areas. So please, welcome to the show, Dr. Paul Cross. Woo!
Thank you very much. Hi there.
You're very welcome.
Good evening.
Hiya, good evening, and welcome to you. Dr. Paul, shall I call you Dr. Paul or just Paul?
Just Paul's fine.
Good. That's the right answer, because I was thinking it might be a bit awkward if we do a whole show.
Awkward. Yeah.
Dr. Paul. Have you ever asked have you corrected people before and gone, actually it's Dr. Paul?
I've wanted to.
Have you?
I've wanted to several times, but I never have. Never have yet. Maybe I will one day. Depends who it is.
I suppose it depends the tone of the conversation that you're having.
Exactly.
Like if they're being a bit shitty to you, you might
patronising. Yeah.
Let's spool back a little bit. Let's get a bit of an understanding, bit of a sense of your background, Paul. How did you get into doing what you do? Like, have you always been quote unquote a science guy?
Good question. I would say, so when I was at school, I do STEM kind of work with schools, which is science, technology, engineering, mathematics. Basically STEM engagement work. So going to schools, talking to young people about my career and about how to get into STEM careers. And I always say that when I was at school, I actually loved science and art. When I say art, I mean creativity, like creative stuff, whether that's art itself or like writing. And I thought you had to choose one, basically.
Yeah.
So I went the science way because I thought you have to do one thing or another. You can't just do whatever you want and be individual. You can.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I went the science route, but weirdly, I always came back to the creative stuff later on. So that's why I have a bit of a mixture now. I do my science job, but I also do writing and STEM engagement stuff. So.
Okay. So sort of like layers of creativity, but also a sort of respect for logic, like that kind of vibe.
Absolutely, yeah.
Is there, or was there, a sort of danger with exploring science where it's like there's this common misconception that to get into science, and indeed, like in my side of things, into technology, that you have to be some sort of turbo geek? Like when you tell people that you're a scientist, they go, "Oh, right, nerd alert!" Like, is there that sort of misconception still, or has that kind of died now?
No, it's still stereotypes, and
Right.
I'm not like, clever, quite frankly. I'm actually average. I think people think that you have to be super intelligent to do certain jobs, and you don't. Like I'm actually really bad at maths, and maths is quite a big part of my job. So there's other people that do that, statisticians we call them, and they do all the stats stuff, and I just go, yeah, thanks, that looks fine to me. So
Yeah, it's sort of like I'm sensing some parallels with the tech world. So I always felt very similarly to you that to get into to tech, web development, programming, like whatever you want to call it, you would have to have got like a B or an A in maths at GCSE, and like I even pushed back on my director when he suggested, he was like, "Oh, you should do web development. You should retrain." And like I was like, I've never been good at maths. Like that's literally what I said. Like just shutting down this opportunity that had been like handed to me on a plate. Just like, I'm not very good at maths. It was only once I started exploring it, I was like, oh, well, I don't fucking need to know this. Yeah, like I'm fine. Okay, cool. So did you? I mean, was STEM a thing when you were studying at school, or did you just you were good at biology and physics? And...
Yeah, biology actually. So biology is my passion, and I ended up doing a biology degree, and then I didn't really, to be honest, I didn't really know what I wanted to do like most people. I just did it. I know I like biology, so I did a biology degree, and then I started looking. I was in Nottingham. I went to Nottingham Trent University, and at the end of uni, I started looking for jobs. I had loads of interviews. This is like 2003, whatever it was, and there was no jobs. And then there was actually jobs available in London. So I just kind of found this, a phase 1 unit, which is a volunteer centre where clinical trials are done. And it was like recruiting new graduates. And I was like, great, I'm just going to send my CV. Got an interview and literally got the job within about 2 weeks. And they were recruiting loads of graduates at the same time. So it was like a kind of recruitment drive.
Yeah.
And I moved to London, and that was it. The rest is history. So it wasn't actually a plan to go into trials that way, but I just as I started work, there was new legislation in place for trials coming in 2004.
Right.
I became like experienced in that. And then quite quickly, we realised that in academia in particular, they weren't up to date with the legislation. So I got lots of jobs moving around, checking trials and making sure they were done according to the new rules. And that's how I built my experience over the years.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I suppose my experience of clinical trials was... like a lot of people's, was that one infamous one that went really bad.
Yes, in 2006. Yeah.
But I guess it's important to emphasize that was like a one-off, and like what I mean, you can probably tell me what the chance, like one in a, like what chance is that of that sort of stuff happening?
Incredibly unlikely. So what happened there, and it's actually changed legislation as well. It's called the T-Genero incident. It was a company that gave a new medicine to, I think it was 6 volunteers all at the same time. So actually, since that time, phase 1 first in human trials, when you give a new medicine to somebody for the first time, it's done in a phased approach now.
Okay.
So one person, then maybe an hour later or the next day, the next person, then the next day. That is standard practice now. After that happened, because giving it to 6 people and realizing that 6 people were suddenly getting sick at the same time was obviously serious. And so now it's done, the first time in human it's done in a phased approach. So things do change as a result of these issues. But it was, like you said, it was really unlikely, really rare. It's the first time internationally that's happened in kind of recent times of trials, I should say. Obviously, there's things like the thalidomide in the 60s. There's obviously been things that have happened in the past which have influenced medicine development and medicine's legislation as well. So,
is there a product that you've been involved in, like clinical trials, where it sounded like, oh my, this is going to be a game changer, and then the clinical trial went so bad, like for whatever reason, like it was still effective, but it just put like, oh, we can't put this out?
Yeah, there's been those trials that nothing bad's happened. It's just that it's not as effective, or for example, it's really expensive to make.
Right.
And yet it's not that much better than something that already exists. So like comparing it to something else that's already out there, and they realise that it's got 1% effectiveness difference, and yet it's 100 times more expensive. So it's just not going to work in practice. There's so many elements to this. There's the safety and the efficacy, but there's also the cost effectiveness as well. Is it worth going this new direction with a new medicine. Yeah, so there's multiple elements to it.
Sure. And I suppose going into the world of clinical trials, like that must be a buoyant employment sector to be involved in right now because of where we're at with the pandemic and all of these new treatments and ideally like sort of long-lasting vaccines and stuff. So have you had much involvement in that in the pandemic?
Yeah, so part of my role now is auditing. So I audit hospital sites, go in there, look at the trial, and interview the staff. Like I said, there's legislation. A lot of my work is kind of training and education. So I teach people generally. I do lots of training online. During the pandemic, I've done it online. I used to do it face-to-face. Finally getting back to face-to-face, which is good. I go into hospitals, I audit, I look at the files, I look at the how the medicines were administered and making sure that that's done according to the protocol. Every single trial has a clinical trial protocol, which we have to work to. And that often changes throughout the trial. It gets updated as you learn things, learn information, whether it's from a safety perspective or whether it's from a logistical perspective, i.e. taking 3 samples 5 minutes apart on the ward didn't work, so let's do it 10 minutes apart. These kind of things, which you need to build into a protocol, sometimes don't work in practice, so you have to edit it along the way.
Right.
So that's the kind of work I do, is making it work in practice, I guess.
Yeah, like piece by piece, gradually just getting to a point where it makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. And I suppose, like, while we're on the subject of the pandemic, it'd be good to get your thoughts on kind of where we're at with it. Like, I mean, it's sort of rightly or wrongly fallen down the news cycle to some extent now. There's the war in Ukraine. We've got local elections coming up. There's a lot of political instability over here and in the US. So things have kind of, like, even though the numbers of deaths are still in the hundreds a day, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It does feel like there's that, I don't know, the days of salacious Downing Street briefings and everyone just thinking, oh, like, when is this going to end? Like, all of that stuff appears to have sort of been sunsetted to some extent. So what's your take on it? Like, where are we with the pandemic?
It's a good question. I call it, well, a lot of my colleagues and I say we're in a new phase of the pandemic. The pandemic is not over. It's a different phase to what we were in. Like you mentioned, the daily briefings, and we are in a different phase. That's due to many things, mainly vaccination rollout, of course, but also the development of new treatments. You mentioned recent trials. So there's a new drug called Paxlovid, which has been recently licensed, and that is given to high-risk patients if they get COVID now. So somebody who may be vaccinated, may be boosted, but may still have limited immunity for whatever reason, or maybe immunocompromised, for example, they may still be at high risk of getting a serious outcome from COVID, right? Hospitalization or death. So this new antiviral drug, which can be given within a few hours of realizing you've got COVID, will hopefully suppress that. And it's worked in trials. It's now being rolled out. So we see it in public health, we see it as having a toolbox, right? We've got multiple tools now in the toolbox to manage this ongoing pandemic, but we're still not out of it. I still have concerns about mass infection, because there's the potential for new variants. Of course, we know that it's happened multiple times already, although it's looking all right at the moment, but things could change. What worries me is mass infection. What about the long-term effects of COVID? We still don't know that. So what other things going to happen to all of us? I've not had COVID yet, I don't think, but I will likely get it now that I'm going back to normal, as we all are. Yeah. It's probably inevitable that we're going to come across it. So what are the long-term impacts of having COVID? And that's something we don't know.
The thing that's kind of weirded me out a bit with it is, so I did have COVID last year, and it was, like, I didn't get it super serious. I certainly wasn't, rushed off to the hospital. Yeah. It was just like an incredibly bad flu for me. Yeah. Where I was like weekend at Bernie's, just slumped on the floor. Yeah. And I've got 2 young kids, so they were like running around, and my girlfriend was trying her best to keep the plates spinning kind of thing in the house, but I'm just like slumped there, one eye open, just trying to make sure they don't kill themselves. But I guess I'd still categorize that as a relatively mild experience compared to what it could have been. I was reading stuff today where they said that they're starting to figure out now, or they're starting to establish that people who had serious COVID, of which I probably would not count myself in that bracket, but people who have had serious COVID can expect some sort of like cognitive decline, which like blew my fucking mind. I was like, so if you have like I mean, this whole time we've been thinking, it's more serious than the flu, but also most people have it mild. But also you might get it kind of serious. And now we're saying, and also if you do get this sort of flu-y thing, you might fucking damage your brain.
Yeah, exactly. So what we know about COVID is that it's definitely not like the flu. It's not an influenza virus. It infects multiple organs and tissues, including the brain and the heart. So, and what else? We don't know everything yet. We're learning every day. It's also long COVID as well. Obviously that post-viral syndrome that's affecting millions of people. So again, we don't want to scaremonger, because it's just like we have to live. This is the situation we're in. This is the world we live in now. Yeah. We have to get on with life to some degree. So I accept that. But for me, I still do a risk assessment every day. I think about, on the tube, I always wear a mask. I wear a mask in the pub. But I do go to the pub. I didn't go to the pub before. I've started going back to the pub and seeing my friends, which is great. Actually socialising again.
Yeah.
These kind of things that I was not doing because I was like completely paranoid. Actually, no. We need to consider the other elements. Mental health, for example, being locked away is not good for our mental health. There's all these other things that have come out from the pandemic, which we need to deal with. So.
Yeah, I suppose it's a balancing act, isn't it? Like, you need to see your friends and family. Like,
it's a great way to describe it. Yeah.
We're a social species. We thrive on, I suppose you could make the case that we're supposed to operate in tribes. We're supposed to sort of, move around a lot more than we do now. We tend to live in like towns and cities with tens of thousands, if not millions of people. But we are like fundamentally a social being. And when you remove that connection from people and that need to have sort of a transactional conversation, like an exchange with someone, I'm not a psychologist. I don't know what that does to someone, but I imagine it generates depression, because speaking Absolutely. As a parent, when you're a parent and you're sort of effectively locked in your house, isolated from people, we all know what that does in like postpartum kind of period. And so I guess it's just, taking precautions, wearing a mask where you can, getting your jab when they're offered. Actually, exactly. That's an interesting thing to get onto. So I had sort of assumed that we were going to continuously roll out like booster programs to keep everyone kind of topped up, but everything appears to have slowed down now. Is that your understanding as well, or can we expect another program happening? Or
yeah, I think it's still up in the air a little bit. I think they're going to, it's all about risk assessment, right? So that's part of what I do in my job as well, actually, is risk assessment. You assess, where I do it, for example, I do it on the ward. Look at the risks for a trial. So one of them would be the risks of giving the medicine to 6 people at once. You do it to one person at a time, that based on what happened in 2006. So it's the same principle, right? It's about applying risk to a situation. Now, this is a big scale. Public health is a massive scale of, considering all these different elements, from mental health through to schools and the impact on children's education. There's all these other elements to consider. So they're having to do it. I don't envy the people who are having to make these decisions. I really don't, because it's that bigger picture, and they're having to balance all those different elements and spin all those different plates, let's say, and work out, right, what is the best outcome here. So going back to the question, I think I know. So basically, I actually have therapy for. I've got arthritis, so I have injections monthly, right? So I'm classed as high risk, but I'm kind of probably low risk of the high risk group people, right?
Right.
So I'm 40. I'm not elderly. I've got other kind of things on my side, against that. So I'm probably lower risk. But for me, because I have that medication, I know that I am at risk of getting COVID and maybe having a worse outcome. So that's why I probably avoid things more than others, right? So if you don't have that risk, then you wouldn't need to do it. So I'll probably continue to have boosters because of that, as will people in older categories and other different conditions, because it's the best thing to do. I don't know about the population. I'm not sure what the decision making is there yet. I haven't heard anything about that actually for a while. I assume there'll be boosters around the end of the year again, perhaps, for the majority of people.
Yeah. I was sort of looking at it on the basis that, so I think I got my booster in November or December. And they were saying, like, especially with Omicron, that the efficacy or the, like, I can't think of the word now. Brain's completely gone. But perhaps that's my long COVID kicking in. But the, like, how effective the vaccine works after, like, they reckoned between, like, 8 weeks and 10 weeks it would start to fade. So I'm thinking, so at this stage, I'm probably defenseless. So I'm a little bit like, if they're going to roll out the booster program and you say, like, you know, there's probably conversations going on and they have to weigh these things up, but I'm a bit like, you're leaving it a bit late.
When you say defenseless, you're definitely not defenseless. You've got
Right.
immunity, and that's the thing. When immunity wanes, it is like a sliding scale, and it's not like to the zero. It's just
Oh, I
like
see.
slowly going down, and that's kind of model. There's modelling done of all that, and you have to take many samples from many thousands of people, millions of people, to work out the kind of how that is declining. And I don't think that it goes back to zero. But
Okay.
remember that what we're looking at here, the vaccines are really good at preventing serious illness and death, right? That's the
Yeah.
kind of focus. It doesn't stop you from getting COVID.
Mm.
So just because your immunity may be waning, you may get COVID. It doesn't. It just hopefully they protect you against serious illness and death. That's kind of the point. So that's what the boosters will continue to do, is just boost us continuously to keep that.
Yeah. Oh, you're frozen. You still there? I lost you there for a second, but I think
You
you're
hear me?
back. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're back. It's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So okay. So like where you were saying a second ago about you know, they don't prevent you getting COVID. They
Yeah.
just, you know, hopefully, ideally, prevent you getting serious illness and death. It sort of brings me on to my next point. So at the height of the pandemic, you were supporting and fighting misinformation. How the fuck do you do that? Like, how do you do that in 2020 it was kicking off, right? And through 2021. And like, I have intelligent friends who were buying into this stuff, going like, oh, you know, masks are just face nappies. And, you know, if you can smell a fart through a pair of jeans, then why would you think that a mask was going to, you know, like all of the usual rubbish. How did you, what was the strategy? Like, what were you pulled in to do to fight all of that?
That's a good question. I was a bit naive actually. I was like, oh yes, I work in trials. I can tell people about that.
Yeah.
I just go on the internet and talk about it, and I was like, oh, whoa, what's this?
Yeah.
All these trolls, you know. It's like I
But
have
did
no
they call
idea.
you? Did they call you like a shill? Like,
Honestly, I made some TikToks about it actually. I'll send them to you.
yeah,
I did a TikTok. You remember there's that trend about kind of comments made into like posters or whatever it was, like made into motivational posters.
oh right,
And it was like I did all the posters behind me with like shill and fart and demon and you know like,
yeah,
all these things I got called, like the devil,
yeah,
evil, going to hell, all this kind of stuff for working on vaccines. It's like, all right, calm down. Yeah, so I didn't know what to expect really. I was a bit naive. I didn't do a lot of this, to be honest, compared to some of my colleagues who do a lot more videos and have been like
like
making
outreach
making a
stuff.
lot more content. I
Yeah,
feel like a bit of a fraud compared to them because I literally did this occasionally compared to some people who literally made videos every day.
yeah,
And actually, I'll be honest, the part of the reason why I didn't do it as much is because of the trolling. I just literally got to a point where I was like, I can't bear it, and that was a bad thing to do because they wouldn't at the end of the day. They kind of trolled me into
it's
silence.
it's a hard thing to like. You've got to have quite a thick skin, and not take yourself too seriously because
Yeah,
they will fucking go in on you.
yeah,
And I know, like, I'm not a scientist fighting misinformation. I'm just an idiot that does, you know, mostly political, jokey stuff, or, you know, occasionally serious. But it's, you know, they don't hold back. Like, if, like, I've had everything from you look like a rat to big ears to uh, calling me a champagne socialist because of how I speak. Uh, like, I mean, it is relentless. Like, today I put a tweet out, just saying, like, I mean, I'm pretty sure this is it word for word, but like the tweet was something along the lines of, I understand if you don't want to vote for Keir Starmer or if you don't want to vote for Labour, but what I don't understand is why you would hate him more than Boris Johnson. Like, and the
yeah.
nuts and the bolts of it are basically like, look, you don't have to vote for Keir Starmer because you fucking love him, but you know, it's a bit weird that you hate him more than Boris Johnson, right? But the flack, oh my god, like my Twitter's exploded today with just people digging out my old tweets, people like drawing
Oh my
pictures
gosh.
on my face, like on my profile picture, and I'm a bit like,
Oh, weird.
if I had thinner skin, or if I was sort of really or if I was a woman on the internet, like what would they have done to me?
Mm,
So it's, yeah, I don't know. It can be, the internet's a cruel fucking place if certainly if
absolutely.
you're new to it and if you're not used to that sort of stuff. So that's
Well,
depressing that they sort of scared you off to some extent.
I think I kind of had phases where I stopped and then started again. I think now I've got to that point where I've got thicker skin now and I deal with it. And because a lot of my colleagues, particularly women in STEM, got loads of misogyny, and actually we kind of formed groups, on WhatsApp and stuff where we talked about stuff, and actually it helped. That kind of peer support actually really helped. And when I saw what some of the people were going for, I was like, oh my gosh, I've got it easy. Actually, I need to just get back on this. I can't be hiding away when actually I got one comment on my post, compared to these people like what you obviously had as well. So I've also realised it's just a lot of it is, a lot of it is bots. A lot of it's not real. I think during the pandemic there was a lot of disinformation.
Yeah.
I'm not sure which country was involved in that, but I think we can probably guess after some recent events. So all this kind of stuff. There's a lot more to it than meets the eye. It's not always,
I mean, this is it. Like I have a theory that if somebody sends me an abusive tweet or an insulting tweet or whatever, if they don't have a realish sounding name or handle and they have some sort of fake cartoony profile picture, I will make the educated guess that that is it's not a bot in the sense of it being an automated service, but it's a bot in the sense that it is probably a foreign nation trying to create, distortion and division. And the reason I come to that conclusion is I think there are people out there who use Twitter anonymously for all manner of reasons. Some of them are just outright cowards who want to go online and start shit for whatever reason. And then there's some people who use it anonymously because their identity is actually quite sensitive. Like if you've got someone who's trans or gay or, and they want to go on to experience the internet, but they can't go on as their true self because, their family find out. Like that. I'm sure that is the case for some people, but I think the lion's share by a huge majority is either, like foreign nation stuff or very angry individuals. And if it's either one of those, it's a bit like, oh, well, I don't really give a fuck.
Yeah.
I'm
starting to realise that actually, whether these people matter, and actually, especially the trolls that are like actually anti-science, I've got over it. I'm doing the right thing. I'm doing my best.
Right.
Just actually, I have a profile with my face, and I put videos and content out.
Yeah.
Most of these people don't even show their faces, so that's it, isn't it? Really, that shows what's the point of being intimidated by these people?
The interesting thing though is like, so you put let's say dispelling or dismantling misinformation video out onto TikTok, right? And then they give you 2 or 3 shitty comments, and that's enough to make you, as an intelligent person who is capable of critical thought, it's enough to make you go like, oh shit, I don't know if I'm up for this. This is a bit, But isn't it interesting that it's the people who put the misinformation out who must get hundreds, if not thousands of comments saying, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Shut this account down. You're such a twat. You're killing people with this stuff. Like, and they literally like, yeah, well,
just carry on.
I don't care. Yeah. Like, what is it about that type of mind? It's like,
that's the other thing. That's what annoys me about myself and about people, my colleagues, that we get really bothered by it being wrong as well. If we make a mistake, like we say something wrong, we're like, I have to delete the video and redo it because actually that piece of information is wrong, that was valid last Monday, but now it's different,
Yeah.
And actually, there's people like posting complete crap and it's going viral, 6 million views, and then they don't care. And actually, we're worried about our content being perfect, and that also comes down to the content creation as well. That actually, if something is not clear yet, for example, the vaccine effectiveness, whatever, and then we don't want to make a video on it until we know the facts, and then actually, by the time we do the video, it's pretty too late, and we've lost that impact or that important moment that we should have done it at. So we're constantly analysing everything, and it's just like, stop overthinking it, just do it.
Yeah, you got to jump on that trend quick. That's the thing.
Yeah. Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, like you versus one of these misinformation accounts are completely different profiles, though. So you're coming from a place of science, right, which is fundamentally a search for truth, to find the fact of something. They are on there literally to generate clicks or create shit, start some drama. So yeah, it's unsurprising that they would fail to correct. So sometimes it's infuriating as well, because it's like, I suppose like my equivalent of this would be last week I did a video where I was talking about how if there was such thing as a fascism dashboard, then it would be blinking red right now because of like all of these bills that the government have put through. Yeah. And I was describing the health and social care bill and the crime and sentencing bill and jailing journalists for 10 years if they embarrass the government, and all of these threats and all of these bills. And one of the examples I wheeled out was protesting could get you a 10-year sentence, right? And somebody commented with, like, I don't know, 2 followers, or, you know, just an anonymous account, just said, this is misinformation. Don't be surprised if you're like, or don't cry about it when your account gets pulled, when you're putting out lies like this. And it really, like, it was visceral, Paul. Yeah. It was like, oh fuck, maybe I did put something out that wasn't 100%.
It makes you doubt yourself. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's part of their playbook, is to make you doubt yourself, and you go, oh shit, I need to check all that. And,
well, that's exactly what happened. Like, so then I was like, mate, did I get the number of years wrong of the potential, like the sentencing guidelines or so? So then I went away. I thought, you know what? I can't leave it up. I don't want to have my account pulled. I don't want to be pulled up, 5, 10 more times by other people saying, oh, he's got it wrong. This is a lie. So I just deleted the video. And then later I was talking to one of the other creators, Davey Moo. And I was saying, like, oh, I made a mistake earlier on this TikTok, and I said it was 10 years sentence for protesting, and he goes, it is 10 years.
It is, yeah.
And I was like, are you fucking kidding? And then he went off and like tried, because I said, I tried to find some news to support it. And he was like, look here, like he posted like a couple of articles saying, 10 years for protesting. And I was like, oh, motherfucker. Like, and this little anonymous account with like no followers is like, oh, this is a lie. And then I'm like, oh shit, I have to delete it all. It's just infuriating. I guess it's
so annoying.
Similar to what you're describing.
Absolutely. That's exactly it. And often, then I've had this conversation with my colleagues so many times that we're like, actually, what we're doing is right. And if it's a mistake, it doesn't matter. There's so much misinformation. We just say, we just do a duet and say, actually, this was wrong. It's now this, or whatever. You just add to it. You add to the information you put out there. And I think we've started to realise that that's more important. And then some of my colleagues have been amazing. Like from day one in the pandemic, they did videos and they've done them every day since then, which is like a lot of videos. And actually getting to know them during the pandemic has been great. It's been giving me confidence to do more of it. And so I started going to schools actually and doing school visits. You'd be surprised how many kids are worried about vaccinations now because of the misinformation they've seen on TikTok or wherever.
Yeah,
that's a big problem now, and it's impacting all different areas of other childhood vaccinations as well, not just COVID.
Yeah.
So it's a big issue. It's only going to get worse for a while, and you have to just get back on it.
Like the whole sort of anti-vax stuff, I thought naively perhaps had been confined to southern states in the US. Like I never dreamed that it would come over this way. And my first sort of experience of seeing it actually in the UK, I went to go and get my hair cut, and this I think I'm okay to say this obese lady was cutting my hair, and we got talking about the pandemic because that was the big thing, and I think it was in between lockdowns when everyone was like, we can all get out for a haircut now, like that sort of period. And I said, oh, have you had your jab yet? Oh, you booked in for your jab? And she was like, no, I just don't trust it. I'm not sure what it'll do to me, and I'd just rather wait. And I remember sitting there thinking, like, getting my hair cut by this obese woman with like clogged arteries, who like, I mean, I know this sounds mean, but fuck it, I'm gonna say it. Probably just came off a lunch break, scoffing a fucking Burger King and like a couple of Pepsis and like ice cream and stuff, and then she's like, I don't know what it'll do to my arteries. Like, what if it clogs my arteries, Aid? Anyway, let me cut. I'm just like, oh Christ, really? Have we've really drunk the Kool-Aid of this in the UK? That was my first experience. Have you got friends? So you're in science, you're in the thick of it. Have you also got friends who have bought into the anti-vax stuff?
Yeah.
Really?
Really have, and this is the thing, right? It's a lot of misinformation stems from something, right? So if somebody says vaccines are 100% safe, and then there's an adverse event which is in the news, but they're like, wait a minute. So a lot of this is based on real fear, and you can understand it.
Mm.
So the way we try to explain it back is actually it's a risk assessment, right? risks. Okay, so the risks of COVID are greater versus the vaccine. That's proven multiple times now. So nothing is risk free, and that's what we try and put across. That there are risks with the vaccine. Some people do react to a vaccine. Some people have a bad effect, but there's very few numbers compared to the people that get sick from COVID in the current pandemic. So it's that kind of balance of going, right, which group should I go into? The one with the less illness, or the one with the more illness? I'll go into the less illness and have the vaccine.
Yeah.
But talking about that, what you said about people's understanding of risk as well. There was a viral TikTok, and it was a woman smoking, talking about the vaccine, how she was not going to have a vaccine. It was just, and she was smoking like 20 cigarettes during this spiel on video.
Yeah.
And everyone was commenting, you're literally killing us. And it's the same thing. Like, people just, how could you not have a vaccine but you'll smoke 20 cigarettes? It's the same thing.
Yeah. Well, it becomes a sort of a culture or like subculture, doesn't it? It's like, I'm all about personal liberty, personal freedom. That's why I choose to smoke, and that's why I say no to this jab. Like, that becomes their entire identity. It's weird. This
was the thing. The moment when vaccination was politicized, which was in the US mainly, and it's spread around the world, and not just the US, it's been in multiple countries, but that was a big thing in the US, that politicization of vaccines. That was it. That was a kind of shot in the foot. So science and politics do go hand in hand, because politics, the government funds science, of course. So there's always that need for them to be linked, but there should have been a separation very early on. So
yeah. Okay, let's move on, because I'd like to talk a bit about your STEM education stuff. My sense of, I mean, look, I don't really know much about STEM research, but the little I do understand of it is that it has the potential to be huge for mankind in terms of curing and treating people with a plethora of issues. But it also gets pushback from fundamentalists, from like religious quarters. So perhaps you can't be this brutal, but I can. So I'm just going to say it. Do you accept that as sort of nature of the beast when these people say, oh, it's unholy, you're creating these cells, you're playing God? Do you accept that as nature of the beast, that you have to deal with fucking morons like that, or does it frustrate you?
I don't really think about it, to be honest, because all the research that I'm involved in, any research that I've seen in my career, it has to go through an ethics committee. It goes to a committee. Any piece of research, whether it's doing a clinical trial or whether it's doing some genetics analysis or maybe some gene therapy, whatever it may be, has to go through ethics. And an ethics committee is made up of multiple people, from priests through to lawyers, through to lay people. Lots of different types of people go on a committee, and they sit in a big room. The person running the study has to present that study to the committee, and they make an assessment. And that is part of the approval of every study in the UK. Actually, I think most countries, really. I don't really know to be exact, but definitely in the UK. So from my perspective, I've always thought the ethics is priority. That is considered by an independent panel. I've never thought about the people who are against it, to be honest.
Like people campaigning and lobbying against it after that ethics committee. Do they have a similar thing in the US then? Because I feel like maybe the anti-STEM movement is bigger over there, but maybe it'll be like the anti-vax thing and bleed its way over here.
Yeah, they have something called an Institutional Review Board, IRB, which is basically the equivalent of a Research Ethics Committee, REC, which is here in the UK. So most countries have some sort of ethical board. It's an IRB in the States. So again, they have approval to do research. And I don't really think about it, because...
Do you ever get pushback in these? Well, first question, I suppose. Have you've sat or presented in these ethics committees, or?
I presented. I've never sat as a member of an ethics committee, but I had to present my PhD project, and I was really scared. Actually, it was one of the most scariest things that I've done, because I've never presented my own research before. I'd always set up trials on behalf of other people, or with a pharma company, or with the NHS, or whoever it was. So I was never actually doing. This is what I created. I was like, is it really shit?
Is there anything?
You're gonna be like,
are you familiar with any like ethics committee presentations that were then not signed off? They were like, no, this is fucked. Like, why would you do this? Really?
Yeah, definitely. Clinical trials, sometimes most things they're not like completely no. They're like, we don't like this, we don't like what you said here, please rewrite it and resubmit. You have to rewrite the protocol, for example. maybe the patients have got to travel 20 times in a week, and that's just too much. So like they shouldn't be traveling that much. Can they stay in a hotel? Yeah, that kind of thing.
Oh,
There's like, it's kind of these like logistical things that make things better for the people taking part in the studies.
I was
And
gonna.
also, there's obviously the safety side as well.
I was
Is
getting
it too?
excited then. I thought you were going to say something like, "Oh yeah, like there's a project 5 years ago. They wanted to grow arms on the back of like terminally ill people on like that aren't conscious. They're just stuck in comas. But then they thought, like that would not get signed off, right? But that would be a
No.
fucking crazy thing to present at an ethics
Do you know what's
committee.
really funny? You said that. I was chatting to my partner. We were watching the X Files reruns,
Yeah,
and during the X Files, there was like 10 years of X Files, right? And the kind of trope of crazy scientists creating gene therapy aliens, whatever, is like in every other episode, right? And we're like, no wonder people in the pandemic don't trust scientists. Like this
yeah,
trope has been like in science fiction for like so many years of this underlying don't trust pharma, don't trust kind of medicine, don't trust scientists. And
yeah.
every time we watch an episode, we were laughing. We're like, oh my god, it's another crazy doctor doing a crazy study, you know? And so yeah, there's a kind of
I
that
suppose
doesn't
it's like
happen,
it starts
fortunately.
off. It starts off as a sort of cliche, lazy thing, and then I
Yes.
wonder if, like, when they do the screenwriting for it, they go, "How are we going to convince the audience that this person is a scientist?" And
Yeah,
then,
yeah,
the writers' room go like, "Well, if we want to make it easy, just white coat and
yeah.
glasses, German accent, and
Evil.
yeah,
Kills
yeah,
people. Yeah, yeah, perfect scientist. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like it's funny. It's cliche, but unfortunately, no. The ethics committees I've been on are really like boring. It's like, how many cups of tea do they get in a week? 5?
yeah,
That's not enough. They should have one every hour. Make it 10.
yeah." Well, that's good. I mean, it's nice to know that the ethics committee have solved any ethical concerns, that they can
Yeah,
focus on just cups of
yeah, yeah.
tea and stuff. So just to be clear, no presentations for anything like the human centipede.
Not that I've been aware of. I need to put a
That's a
clause at the bottom
really,
of this. I've
that's
not
like
been
a,
involved in every committee, so I don't know. It may
it's a
have
really
happened.
like political answer there. It's like, not that I've been aware. You're not fully denying it though, Paul.
Who knows what happens behind closed doors? I watch the X Files.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's jump onto this next question, because I'm itching to pick your brain on this. So this is a bit outside of your field perhaps, but I know you said you're not an overly smart guy, but come on, you're a bit smart, and you must be G'd up about the potential that we have to be great, right, as human beings, as like how far we're getting with research at the moment to reduce suffering, to employ human ingenuity, to get ourselves out of global challenges. But I sort of feel like we're just on this precipice of understanding of like the singularity of the virtual reality revolution and things like STEM. And yet, just as we're about to figure all these things out, is just at the same moment we're about to run out of oil and civilization collapses or climate change renders the entire planet uninhabitable. Like, firstly, that's a weird moment to be just at this peak where everything's going to get fucking amazing, and at the same time, everything's going to collapse. Like, am I completely off base with that? Do you feel like is that where we're at, or am I being really doomsday?
That's what I think about all the time. I go from one to the other, right? I swing between the two of like hope and like we're at this amazing like utopia to the oh no, it's going to be dystopia. I literally one extreme to the other.
How bad do
And
you
then
think it's going to
obviously
get?
this year with what's happened in Ukraine, you think, yeah, what's going to happen? And yeah, we're just going to destroy ourselves, probably. Hopefully not.
This is interesting because there's a guy, oh, I forget his surname now, Daniel Whitson, I think, Daniel Whiteson, was on a few weeks ago. He's a physicist. And I asked him a very similar question. And I said, so like, do you have hope that we're going to, make it through this period? And then, because we were talking about time travel and we were talking about light speed travel and all
Cool.
this stuff. And I said, so do you think we're going to make it through like the next 50, 100 years to actually see this stuff come to fruition? He's like, nah. I was like, fucking great. So what are we even excited about here? Like, we'll figure out light speed travel and then actually never be able to use it.
I think for me, the climate crisis is the scariest thing. The fact that it's like completely, people just carry on like normal without thinking about it. And this is like not 1,000 years from now, it's 50 years from now. There could be a mass exodus. could be mass extinction due to methane escaping from the surface, the kind of Siberia, for example. There's all these kind of things that I read about, which I shouldn't read about. And I go, actually, is that going to happen? Then you read about 10 more articles. It's like 10 different people saying 10 different things. You're like, just ignore it. Go back to normal. Focus on today, So I do go through one extreme to the other.
But it's kind of like if you do read too deeply into it, you'll drive yourself fucking nutty.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's good to be aware. But at the same time, it's like, is it good to be aware, or should you just be blissfully ignorant? Because actually what you're doing is making your time here now more miserable.
This is what I talk about every day, and that's what I've been saying this a lot lately. It's like, it's not good to be blissfully ignorant, but it's also not good to ruin whatever time we do have. You don't know how. And also, we could go out tomorrow and get hit by a bus. The climate crisis could be irrelevant. So this is what I'm telling myself now. Actually, try and live in now. Try and work on amazing studies. Kind of present science to kids, get them inspired. To hopefully be the kids, the people that fix all these problems. Maybe, who knows?
Yeah.
I thought that's the only thing I can do now is just try and do the best I can with whatever time there is.
Yeah, I mean that's the key thing is, like, it's good to be aware, like we said, but I think it's good to be also aware of your limitations as a human being in terms of like how much you can personally do to fix this or escape this.
Yeah.
And that's a huge thing. That's like, well, if I read 15 blogs about the climate crisis and see how bad everything's going to get, well, fucking great, but you're going to turn yourself into a nervous wreck and you won't be able to do, like, your margin for change to actually escape anything. Like, what are you going to do? Fly off to some corner of New Zealand? And it's like, even then it's like not guaranteed that you're like, the climate will change. There'll be no rain there. Like so it's kind of like you have to admit, unfortunately, that you are not the master of your own destiny, and whatever happens is kind of going to happen.
There's also a lot of, especially there's a lot of climate activists and climate communicators who are saying actually the kind of doom and gloom is not helping anybody, and we can actually deal with this if we all start focusing on the positives. There's some really amazing communicators on TikTok actually who share kind of all the good things that are happening with climate change, climate solutions.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to follow more of them and trying to read, watch their videos and go, yeah, okay, there is stuff happening and it is good, and that's all we can do, isn't it?
Yeah, like there's some hope there buried deep in the depths of my mind. But like I wrote a blog on this a few weeks ago, Paul, and I looked at different energy sources. It was off the back of like in the first few weeks of Ukraine, and I thought, like, why is nobody talking about this like for what it is? It's an oil or gas war, because Ukraine is rich with, it's just a fucking sweetie shop of like natural resources, and should they pull out all of the natural gas from Ukraine and sell it to the EU, Russia are kind of fucked, because that's where Russia sell all of their natural gas. So why is nobody talking about this? And like the conclusion that I came to was like, because if they start talking about this and actually shining a light on it for what it is, instead of talking about like Vladimir's gone mad or like, it's neo-Nazis taking over. If they actually were honest about it and said, this is all about gas and there's only a finite amount of it left, and when it does run out, everything's fucked. Your neighbours are going to break into your house and bludgeon you to death for the contents of your larder. Like, if they were that honest about it, people would lose their fucking minds.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I started looking at these different energy sources and all the usual suspects like nuclear and oil and wind and solar, and literally every single one of them, one by one, I was like, that's not going to work, because solar panels, are you going to cover the whole world in solar panels? Which countries are going to go without solar panels that can't afford the oil that generates solar panels? And the same with wind, and the same with like nuclear comes from uranium, but there's only enough uranium to power the world at current levels for the next like 50 years. So if power goes up and up, like, and if we power the entire world with uranium, that's going to go down to about a tenth of, so it would last like 12 years or so. So basically I went through all of this shit and I was like, yeah, we're really, really fucked.
Can I just say I was really ignorant to all that, and now I feel really stressed.
Well, yeah, I like to spread my joy unto the world.
I was like, everything's great, the world's going to be fine, we're going to fix it. And I'm like, oh no, shit, I haven't been reading enough.
Yeah,
I was ignorant. I was willfully ignorant.
I'm sorry to bring you down like that. I'm sorry to, against all the odds, educate the scientist where I'm the guy that doesn't really know anything. But yeah, I was talking to a guy the other day, and he was like, just take solace in the fact that we're in Britain, and Britain have quite a lot of money, and so Britain will probably buy a shit ton of solar panels and be all right. It will be like the vaccines all over again.
I saw an article actually about today. Like Boris Johnson's announced this like link to Morocco to have solar panels or something, some power
really?
from Morocco. I was like, what? Why is he suddenly announcing all this stuff 2 days before the elections? Like, oh no, we're going to save climate change. It's like, dodgy. It's not actually real, is it? It's a made up story.
Yeah, it's like just like how many lies do we have to hear before we go?
Yeah.
Like this is a lie, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's perfectly planned for 2 days before the elections. So
Yeah, like I saw something similar. I think it was yesterday or this morning. He said he was going to build a new nuclear power station every year for 10 years. I was like,
is this like the 40 hospitals that they were going to build that only six existed or something?
yeah, it's exactly what I thought. I was like, 40
Yeah.
new hospitals, and what was it, like 20,000 new police? And
Or was it 20,000 new staff that actually were the same people that already existed, but just
yeah. Or the other one was
fudging the numbers.
yeah, like not PPE, the gloves. Does that count as PPE? But they said, oh yes, we've got 50,000 new pairs of gloves or something coming in, and they were counting like each glove. So one glove was like gloves. It's so hooky.
It's so depressing.
But yeah, so I'm not really sure how to leave us on a high note then, Paul.
No.
Give me some uplifting news from the science world that we can round off with. What's the last good news story that you heard?
A gene therapy gel has been created for a disease which causes kind of a breakdown of proteins, and it's called, I can't remember the name of the disease, epidermis something bullosa. Okay. That's not the right word. Ignore that. Anyway, it means basically it's a disease that causes a breakdown of proteins in the tissue, right? So these patients get really bad, their skin literally breaks down. They kind of walk out into the street and they tear, and they have to like be bandaged. It's a really horrific rare disease. They've created gene therapy. Basically, it's due to a lack of protein in the tissue. So this gene therapy puts the right genes in, and the genes for this protein are kind of added to the genetic makeup, and then it can repair. It can create healthy tissue basically. So this is happening recently. It's been amazing. It's an amazing piece of gene therapy research, which is going to hopefully improve the lives of many people with this horrible, awful disease. So that's good.
Pretty amazing. How far away are we? Just when we were touching on STEM education earlier, how far away are we with STEM where somebody can have a stroke and it destroys part of their like sort of physical, and like where we talk about their face kind of sloping, they can't talk, or it's slurred speech, and then isn't there some sort of treatment that they were talking about with like with STEM where you could potentially restore all of their function? Is that right? Or
yeah, so I guess so. Basically, a stroke would be a blockage in the brain, and it would obviously stop blood flow to a certain part of the brain. So I guess the idea is that you would put stem cells into the part of the brain that's been damaged, and it would regenerate. So the good thing about stroke is that if you have a stroke, obviously serious stroke's different, but minor strokes, new pathways can be built around the clot, around the dead tissue. So often, a lot of patients get some of their movement back, and that with therapy they can recover. Depends on the severity of the disease, of course, of the stroke. But yeah, I guess there's loads of things like this. There's also using stem cells for people who are paralyzed, for example, who have a spinal cord injury. Putting stem cells into the spinal cord to rebuild that link, and then they can recover the use of their limbs, for example. But I think also we're going to go to technology as well. We're going to be using like exoskeletons for people who can't walk, or bionic limbs are going to get really advanced, where somebody who's lost a limb could have this bionic arm, which could actually be stronger than their original arm. So this is like the transcendence to the next level of humanity. Hopefully we do exist.
It's like, I suppose it'll start off in that regard, like where you're helping people who have suffered an injury to regain the function of a normal human body, and then it will propel itself to like emphasizing or like improving on human functionality. So like one guy will be like, do you know what? I quite fancy having a really fucking strong right
Take
arm.
it off. Just, Give me a new one.
Okay, last question for you, and then we'll have to wrap up. But thank you very much for sharing an hour of your evening with me. So I've had tinnitus for about well, originally I think I got it in I was 26, 27, somewhere around there. And then I went on a long haul flight to Singapore and back, and it got like a lot worse. And now it's at a point like where if I'm like, I lay down to go to sleep, I can always hear it. And I'm like, I struggle at times to hear what my girlfriend's saying. And, but I had read somewhere, this is about a year ago, they were looking into like STEM research for that. Does that ring any bells with you? Are you aware? Does it sound like something that could be fixed with STEM?
I'm not heard of anything, but again, damage to the cochlea or something within the ear. If that's what's causing the tinnitus, then having stem cells to rebuild that kind of damaged area of the ear also makes sense. So yeah, there's going to be so many applications for this technology. And
so when can you squeeze me in?
I'm not doing that. We need to go to the ethics committee first. So
all
talk
right.
about tea and coffee and putting things into people's ears. So,
yeah, it's fine. Like they'll sign it off. I'll just say, he's promised me 7 cups of tea. It's fine.
I'm sure they'll pass it. So.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you so much again for joining me tonight, Dr. Paul Cross. If you enjoy these shows and if you're in a position to, please do consider supporting via Patreon. Shout out to Kerry and Paul once again for getting in there first. There's 3 tiers that you can jump on, and all content goes on Patreon first. It does then go out to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube thereafter, though. That's it from me for now. Once again, thanks to my guest tonight, Dr. Paul Cross. You can go and follow him on TikTok for explainers in the world of science. I will just say this: if you have not voted tactically this week, I will hunt each of you down and club you to death. That's it from me. Keep it strictly #Bimfluencers, #BorisFucksLivestock, and I will catch up with you on Friday. Thanks very much. Bye.